Hello, and welcome again to Cambridge Institute's video series. We have all been familiarized with the differences between American and British differences of vocabulary, culture, history, and so on. What about the two largest English-speaking countries in the world, who just happen to be neighbors? What can we say about the differences between the United States and Canada? So, what really are the differences between these two great nations? I think it's safe to say that America and Canada are similar only in the fact that they are so large and they both speak English. And of course, they were both former British colonies. That is where the majority of the similarities stop. Canada has a different form of government. It is a member of the Commonwealth, so it is officially a parliamentary democracy, or rather, a federal constitutional monarchy. This means it has a monarch, Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, and an elected Prime Minister. The United States is a federal, presidential, constitutional republic. Americans have a president as their government's leader. French and English are the official languages in Canada, while in the United States there is no official language. However, English is the de facto language, meaning that the most commonly used and spoken language is indeed English. Many government services in the U.S. are also provided in Spanish because of its large Hispanic population. So, what do Americans know or think about Canadians? Well, Americans for the most part are oblivious of the differences that separate them from Canadians and unfortunately believe that they are just like themselves, which is not at all the fact. American television and cinema usually poke fun at their northern neighbor and often portray a stereotype of Canadians as polite people who are passionate about hockey. What do Canadians think or know about Americans? Canadians are much more aware of the differences between themselves and their southern counterparts. Canadian television and cinema often portrays Americans as loud, opinionated people with a limited knowledge of things outside the U.S. However, perhaps the most interesting tidbit about the differences between Canada and the U.S. are the language-related ones. Canadians and Americans can immediately tell if they are talking to a Canadian or an American, but for learners of English it is a little more difficult, as well as for other native speakers of English. Let's take a look at the most common differences. Even though Canadians tend to pronounce the last letter of the alphabet, as do the British, as Z, Americans call it Z. Many words that are spelled with the OU combination, about, thought, are pronounced a bit differently in Canada. For example, about sounds like out in standard American English, and in Canadian English it sounds more like aboot. The American word for sneakers in Canada is trainers. In Canada, people sit on a Chesterfield, and in the United States, people used to sit on a Davenport, but now they just call it a couch or sofa. In Canada, most people go to the washroom, while Americans usually prefer the restroom, especially when they're in public. In cold weather, Canadians wear a toque, whereas in the United States, they wear a beanie or toboggan. So, there you have some differences between the two largest English-speaking countries. I hope this sheds some light on the differences between Canada and the United States.